Welcome to this explainer on the true evolution of a leader. If you look around today in a world that is just full of noise, distraction, and a whole lot of uncertainty, it's incredibly clear that we don't need more people simply shouting commands. We need individuals who lead with clarity, conviction, and character. So today, we're going on a really dynamic journey through the core principles that separate the average from the truly great. We're going to unpack the mindset, the tools, and the actionable steps that can completely transform the way you lead, no matter where you are in your life right now. So let's kick things off with a massive question. Are leaders born, or are they built? It's super easy to look at historic figures and just assume they were handed some rare genetic gift of influence, right? But the source material we're breaking down today makes it very, very clear. Leadership is not a gift reserved for a lucky few. It's a skill. It's a daily mindset. And most importantly, it's a deliberate decision you can make today. True leadership isn't about control or holding a fancy title. It is all about responsibility and becoming the kind of person others are genuinely inspired to follow. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The foundation of self. 2. Shaping the path forward. 3. Elevating the people. 4. Mastering failure and resilience. And 5. Building a lasting legacy. Let's dive in. Section 1. The foundation of self. Leading from within. We're starting at the very beginning of all influence. Because honestly, think about it. If you can't manage your own time, your own habits, or your own attitude, how on earth can you expect to guide someone else? Take Denzel Washington, for example. He proves that world-class respect is earned first through quiet, unwavering self-discipline. He doesn't just act on screen. He lives by strict routine, he keeps his circle tight, and he maintains incredibly high standards behind the scenes. He wakes up when the alarm rings, not just when he feels like it. He keeps the promises he makes to himself. That is self-leadership. And that's exactly what earns deep respect long before any title ever could. So this entire foundation, it's built 100% on integrity. Now that doesn't mean being perfect. It's about your actions consistently matching your values, especially when the doors are closed and literally no one is watching. In a world full of shortcuts and half-truths, integrity stands out like a lighthouse. But here's the catch. Compromise it even once, and the trust that took you years to build can vanish in an instant. And there is perhaps no better illustration of this than Nelson Mandela. I mean, just imagine spending 27 years in a prison cell. He had every single reason to emerge with vengeance and resentment in his heart, but he didn't. Instead, he emerged with forgiveness and unity in his vision. He chose moral clarity over bitterness. By living his values when it would have been so much easier to just abandon them, he commanded the respect of the entire world. That is unshakable integrity in action. Which brings us to Section 2. Shaping the path forward, the power of vision. Right, because once you can actually lead yourself, you've got to craft a vision that pulls you and your people through the most difficult storms. And there's a really stark contrast here between accidental leaders and intentional ones. Most people, honestly, lack vision. They just wake up, go to work, repeat. They're accidental. They live by routine and merely react to whatever the present throws at them. Intentional leaders, however, define their vision and design the future. They don't wait for clarity to somehow find them, they go out and create it. They filter every single action through their vision. If a choice moves them closer to it, they do it. If it distracts, they eliminate it. Walt Disney is basically the textbook example of an intentional leader. Long before Mickey Mouse was a cultural icon, Walt held this crystal-clear vision of a place where families could escape the ordinary. And he faced massive hurdles. His very first animation studio completely went bankrupt. He faced ridicule. People literally called the guy crazy. But his vision was simply louder than the critics. Great leaders see it before it's real, and they hold that picture in their minds so clearly that it eventually has no choice but to become reality. But, a grand vision means absolutely nothing without action. When you're facing uncertainty, great leaders use a really straightforward, actionable framework for decision-making. You weigh the options, you make the call, you take full ownership, and you learn from the outcome. Indecision is a total progress killer. A team can handle a wrong decision way better than no decision at all. Think about Rosa Parks. She wasn't incredibly wealthy. She didn't have some grand executive title, but she made a quiet, firm, deliberate decision to stay seated, fully owning the consequences. That single courageous choice sparked a revolution. And as you're making these calls, you absolutely have to adapt. Just look at Howard Schultz navigating Starbucks through the huge 2008 financial crisis. He didn't just point fingers and blame the economy, no. He stepped back in as CEO, made the agonizing choice to close underperforming stores, retrain the staff, and completely refocus the brand. Leaders must embrace uncomfortable change. You have to adapt, or you risk becoming completely irrelevant. You've got to be committed to outcomes, not just old methods. Moving right along to Section 3, elevating the people. Develop others. Now that our path is set and the vision is crystal clear, we have to turn our focus to the people. Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about you being the hero of the story. It's about helping others become the heroes of their own stories. And elevating people starts with how we communicate with them. It's not about big fancy words, it's about real ones. One of the absolute most effective tools is the power of the pause. Great leaders listen to understand, not just to respond. By using silence wisely, you give your team the space to process and think, and you ensure that when you actually do speak, your words carry maximum weight and purpose. This brings us to a really beautiful comparison: ego versus humility. Let's be real. If you walk into a room and you just have to be the smartest, loudest person there, you aren't leading, you're limiting. Leading with a loud ego pushes people down, but quiet humility, much like Mother Teresa demonstrated, lifts them up. She impacted millions of lives, not by demanding attention or seeking power, but by relentlessly giving attention and love. Arrogance closes doors, but humility opens them wide. And when you actually lead with that kind of humility, you can truly develop the people around you. Coach John Wooden is an absolute legend for this. Sure, he won national championships at UCLA, but his true focus was always on character. His players didn't just leave the basketball court as better athletes, they left ready for life. He proved that you multiply your impact by pouring your knowledge into others, empowering them to eventually step up and lead without you. All right, Section 4, Mastering Failure and Resilience. Build resilience. So, what happens when things go totally wrong? When the vision hits a massive roadblock? True leaders know that failure is absolutely not the enemy. It's a necessary builder on the journey to greatness. Let's talk about the number 10,000. That represents Thomas Edison's famous perspective on inventing the light bulb. Before it worked, he failed over 1,000 times, but his mindset was just incredibly resilient. When asked about it, he said he didn't fail. He simply found 10,000 ways that wouldn't work. He didn't let failure define him, he let it refine him. Your identity must be rooted in growth, not perfection. If you want your people to innovate, to really push boundaries, you have got to create a culture that extracts lessons from failure without completely shattering their inner confidence. You do this by encouraging smart risks, by celebrating the effort, and treating setbacks as vital steps to strength. When someone messes up, and they will, you coach them wisely instead of criticizing them harshly, because think about it. If your team is terrified to fail, they will be terrified to try. And when people stop trying, progress simply dies. And finally, we arrive at Section 5, Building a Lasting Legacy, a Lasting Impact. This is the true culmination of our explainer today, because the ultimate measure of your leadership isn't the wealth you accumulate or the fancy titles you hold, it's the lasting transformation you leave behind in others. Remember the story of Miss Davis from our sources? She was just a small-town teacher, no grand title, no global fame. But she didn't just teach math. She saw the invisible potential in her students, the kids who felt completely unseen. She challenged them to grow. And years later, those students carry her words and her belief into their own adult lives. She proves that significance is measured entirely by lives touched, not by awards won. I want to leave you with this final, absolutely vital question to ask yourself today. Where are you taking your people? Are you just managing projects and hustling for outcomes, or are you actually taking the people around you somewhere that truly matters? Leadership isn't about being remembered. It's about making a difference that literally cannot be forgotten. So start with intention, master your own habits, and lead with purpose. The world is waiting.